I just love that. All right, folks. Yeah. Like I was saying, I didn't really want to be recording the sound of noodle slurping on the microphone. I mean, drinks are one thing, noodles are another. They're nice noodles, don't get me wrong, but yeah, exactly. Slurp, slurp, slurp. If, on the other hand, people are really into that sort of thing, let me know. I'm happy to oblige. But until then, proprietary demands certain things. Now, where is it? That's over here. All right. Mm. Well, let's see how far we can go before we go back to Panurge, eh? Yes, actually, I will eat ramen close to microphone for money or other similar exchangeables. Send message. Let's work something out. All right. Until then, we've got a story to get through. Book 3, chapter... Wow, that's 43. How Pantagruel excuseth bridal goose in the matter of sentencing actions at... Get out of here with your motorcycle. Nobody cares. Get out of here. I totally need to make some kind of like recording booth at some point in the future. Oh, clearly. How Pantagruel excuseth bridal goose in the matter of sentencing actions at law by the chance of the dice. My computer's actually pretty loud, so I'm hoping the microphone doesn't get picked up. I mean, the fans. Whatever. With this, bridal goose held his peace. Whereupon Trinquemel bid him withdraw from the court, which accordingly was done, and then directed his discourse to Pantagruel after this manner. It is fitting, most illustrious prince, not only by reason of the deep obligations wherein this present parliament, together with the whole Marquisate of Mirlang, stand bound to your royal highness for the innumerable benefits which, as effects of mere grace, they have received from your incomparable bounty, but for that excellent wit also, pride, judgment, and admirable learning wherewith Almighty God, the giver of all good things, hath most richly qualified and endowed you. We tender and present unto you the decision of this new, strange, and paradoxical case of bridal goose. At least does not Panurge whining about it again, who in your presence, to both hearing and seeing, hath plainly confessed his final judging and determining of suits of law by the mere chance and fortune of the dice. Therefore, do we beseech you that you may be pleased to give sentence therein, as unto you shall seem the most just and equitable. To this Pantagruel answered, Gentlemen, it is not unknown to you how my condition is somewhat remote from the profession of deciding law controversies. Yet, seeing you are pleased to do me the honor to put that task upon me, instead of undergoing the office of a judge, I will become your humble supplicant. I observe, gentlemen, in this bridal goose several things which induce me to represent before you that it is my opinion he should be pardoned. In the first place, his old age. Secondly, his simplicity. To both which qualities our statute and common laws, civil and municipal together, allow many excuses for any slips or escapes which, through the invincible imperfection of either, that's not two words I would have seen together, invincible imperfection, have been inconsiderately stumbled upon by a person so qualified. Thirdly, gentlemen, I must needs display before you another case, which in equity and justice maketh much for the advantage of bridal goose, to wit, that this one sole and single fault of his ought to be quite forgotten, abolished, and swallowed up by the immense and vast ocean of just dooms and sentences which heretofore he hath given and pronounced. His demeanours, for these 40 years and upwards that he hath been a judge, having been so evenly balanced in the scales of uprightness, that envy itself till now could not have been so impudent as to accuse and twit him with any act worthy of a check or reprehension. As if a drop of the sea were thrown into the Loire, none could perceive or say that by this single drop the whole river should be salt and brackish. And I think would have made a whole lot more sense is if I actually understood the Latin, then we could have read all of that stuff and gone, oh, that's what you're on about. Truly, it seemeth unto me that in the whole series of Bridal Goose's juridical degrees, there hath been I know not of what extraordinary savouring of the unspeakable benignity of God, that all those his preceding sentences, awards, and judgments have been confirmed and approved of by yourselves in this your own venerable and sovereign court. For it is usual, as you know well, with him whose ways are inscrutable, to manifest his own ineffable glory in blunting the perspicacy of the eyes of the wise, in weakening the strength of potent oppressors, in depressing the pride of rich extortioners, and in erecting, comforting, protecting, supporting, upholding, and shoring up the poor, feeble, humble, silly, and foolish ones of the earth. But, waiving all these matters, I shall only beseech you, not by the obligations which you pretend to owe to my family, for which I thank you, but for that constant and unfeigned love and affection which you've always found in me, both on this and on the other side of Loire, for the maintenance and establishment of your places, offices, and dignities, that for this one time you would pardon and forgive him upon these two conditions. First, that he satisfy, put a sufficient surety for the satisfaction of the party wronged by the injustice of the sentence in question. For the fulfillment of this article I will provide sufficiently. And secondly, that for a subsidiary aid in the weighty charge of administering justice, you would be pleased to appoint and assign unto him some pretty little virtuous counselor, younger, learneder, and wiser than he, by the square and rule of whose advice he may regulate, guide, temper, and moderate in times coming all his judiciary procedures. Or otherwise, if you intend totally to depose him from his office, and to deprive him altogether of the stated dignity of a judge, I shall cordially entreat you to make a present and free gift of him to me, who shall find in my kingdoms charges and employments enough wherewith to embusy him, for the bettering of his own fortunes and furtherance of my service. Hello, ambulance. Oh, it's done already. In the meantime, I implore the Creator, Savior, and Sanctifier of all good things, in his grace, mercy, and kindness to preserve you now and forevermore, more than end. These words thus spoken, Pantagruel, veiling his cap and making a leg with such a majestic guard as he became a person of his paramount degree and eminency, farewelled Trinquemel, the president and master speaker of that Miralangusin parliament, took his leave of the whole court, and went out of the chamber. At the door whereof, finding Panurge, Epistemon, Friar John, and others, he forthwith, attended by them, walked to the outer bridge, where all of them immediately took horse in return towards Gargantua. Pantagruel, by the way, related to them from point to point the manner of Bridal Goose's sententiating differences at law. Friar John said they had seen Peter Dandin, or Dandin, and was acquainted with him at the time when he sojourned in the monasteries of Fontaine-le-Comte under the noble Abbot Ardillon. Gymnast likewise affirmed that he was in the tent of the grand Christian cavalier de Crécy when the Gascon, after his sleep, made answer to the adventurer. Panurge was somewhat incredulous in the matter of believing that it was morally possible Bridal Goose should have been, for such a long time and space, so continually fortunate in that aleatory way of deciding law debates. Epistemon said to Pantagruel, such another story, not much unlike to that in all the circumstances thereof, is vulgarly reported of the provost of Montelhere. In good sooth, such a perpetuity of good luck is to be wondered at. To have hit right twice or thrice in a judgment so given by haphazard might have fallen out well enough, especially in controversies that were ambiguous, intricate, abstruse, perplexed, and obscure. Right then. Book 3, Chapter 45. How Pantagruel relateth a strange history of the perplexity of human judgment. Seeing you talk, quoth Pantagruel, of dark, difficult, hard, and knotty debates, I will tell you of one controverted before Cnaeus Dolabella, proconsul in Asia. The case was this. A wife born in Smyrna had of her first husband a child named Abeche. He dying, she, after the expiring of a year and day, married again, and to her second husband bore a boy called Ephege. A pretty long time thereafter it happened. As you know, the affections of stepfathers and stepdams is very rare towards the children of the first fathers and mothers deceased, that this husband, with the help of his son Ephege, secretly, wittingly, willingly, and treacherously murdered Ebeche. The woman came no sooner to get information of the fact, but that it might not go unpunished, she caused to kill them both, to revenge the death of her first son. She was apprehended and carried before Cneas Dolabella, in whose presence she... You must tell me how the soup is. In whose presence she, without dissembling anything, confessed all that was laid to her charge, yet alleged that she had both right and reason on her side for the killing of them. Thus was the state of the question. He found the business so dubious and intricate that he knew not what to determine therein, nor which of the parties to incline to. On the one hand, it was an execrable crime to cut off at once both her second husband and her son. On the other hand, the cause of the murder seemed to be so natural as to be grounded upon the laws of nations and the rational instinct of all the people of the world, seeing they two together had feloniously and murderously destroyed her first son. Not that they had been in any manner of way wronged, outraged, or injured by him, but out of an avaricious intent to possess his inheritance. In this doubtful quandary and uncertainty what to pitch upon, he sent to the Areopagites, then setting at Athens to learn and obtain their advice and judgment. That judicious senate, very sagely perpending the reasons of his perplexity, sent him word to summon her personally to compeer before him a precise 100 years thereafter, to answer to some interrogatories touching certain points which were not contained in the verbal defense. Which resolution of theirs did import that it was, in their opinion, a so difficult and inextricable matter that they knew not what to say or judge therein. Who had decided that but plea, by the chance and fortune of the dice, could not have erred nor awarded amiss on which side soever he had passing his casting and condemnatory sentence. If against the woman, she deserved punishment for usurping sovereign authority by taking that vengeance at her own hand, the inflicting whereof was only competent to the supreme power to administer justice in criminal cases. If for her, the just resentment of a so atrocious injury done unto her in murdering her innocent son did fully excuse and vindicate her of any trespass or offense about that particular committed by her. But this continuation of Bridal Goose for so many years, still hitting the nail on the head, never missing the mark, and always judging right, by the mere throwing of the dice and chance thereof, is that which most astonisheth and amazeth me. To answer, quoth Pantagruel, categorically to that which you wonder at, I must ingeniously confess and avow that I cannot, yet conjecturally to guess at the reason of it. I would refer the cause of that marvelously long-continued happy success in the judiciary results of his definitive sentences to the favorable aspect of the heavens and benignity of the intelligences, who, out of their love to goodness, after having contemplated the pure simplicity and sincere unfeignedness of Judge Bridal Goose and the acknowledgment of his inabilities, did regulate that for him by chance, which by the profoundest act of his maturest deliberation he was not able to reach unto. That is good to know. I am looking forward to having some afterwards. That likewise, which possibly made him to defide in his own skill and capacity, notwithstanding his being an expert and understanding lawyer, for anything that I know to the contrary, was the knowledge and experience which he had of the antinomies, contrarieties, antilogies, contradictions, traversing's, and thwartings of laws, customs, edicts, statutes, orders, and ordinances, in which dangerous opposition, equity, and justice being structured and founded on either of the opposite terms, and a gap being thereby opened for the ushering in of injustice and iniquity through the various interpretations of self-ended lawyers, being assuredly persuaded that the infernal calumniator, who frequently transformeth himself into the likeness of a messenger or angel of light, maketh use of these cross glosses and expositions in the mouths and pens of his ministers and servants, To the perverse advocates, bribing judges, law-monging attorneys, prevaricating counselors, and other such like law-wresting members of a court of justice, determined by these means black to white, green to grey, and what is straight to a crooked ply. For the more expedient doing whereof, these diabolical ministers make both the pleading parties believe that their cause is just and righteous. For it is well known, that there is no cause, how bad soever, which doth not find an advocate to patrocinate and defend it. Else would there be no process in the world, no suits at law, nor pleadings at the bar. He did in these extremities, as I conceive, most humbly recommend the direction of his judicial proceedings to the upright judge of judges, God Almighty, did submit himself to the conduct and guideship of the blessed Spirit, in the hazard and perplexity of the definitive substance, and by this aleatory lot, did, as it were, implore and explore the divine decree of his good will and pleasure, instead of that which we call the final judgment of a court. I'm getting really bored with this whole book. To this effect, to the better attaining to his purpose, which was to judge righteously, he did, in my opinion, throw and turn the dice. To that end, by the providence aforesaid, the best chance might fall to him whose action was uprightest, and backed with greatest reason. In doing whereof he did not stray from the sense of Talmudists, who say that there is so little harm in that manner of searching the truth, that in the anxiety and perplexedness of human wits God oftentimes manifesteth the secret pleasure of his design will. Furthermore, I will neither think nor say, nor can I believe, that the unstraightness is so irregular, or the corruption so evident, of those of the Parliament of Mirlingua in Mirlang, before whom Bridal Goose was arraigned for prevarication, that they will maintain it to be a worse practice to have the decision of a suit at law referred to chance and hazard of a throw of the dice, hab-nab, or luck as it will, than to have it remitted to and passed by the determination of those whose hands are full of blood and hearts of wry affections. Besides that, their principal direction in all law matters comes to their hands from one Tribonian, a wicked, miscreant, barbarous, faithless, and perfidious knave, so pernicious, unjust, avaricious, and perverse in his ways, that it was his ordinary custom to sell laws, edicts, declarations, constitutions, and ordinances, as at an outroup or put sale, to him who offered most for them. Thus did he shape measures for the pleaders, and cut their morsels to them by and out of these little parcels, fragments, bits, scantlings, and shreds of the law now in use, altogether concealing, suppressing, disannulling, and abolishing the remainder, which did make for the total law, fearing that, if the whole law were made manifest and laid open to the knowledge of such as are interested in it, and the learned books of the ancient doctors of the law upon the exposition of the 12 tables and Praetorian edicts, his villainous pranks, naughtiness, and vile impiety should come to the public notice of the world. Therefore, were it better, in my conceit, that is to say, less inconvenient, that parties at variance in any judicial case should in the dark march upon caltrops than submit the determination of what is their right to such unhallowed sentences and horrible decrees, as Cato in his time wished and advised that every judiciary court should be paved with caltrops. I felt like I just read a whole mess of words, but I've retained very little of it. Oh no, what did I do? Oh. That's what I did. Right. Well, let's move on. Let's see how this goes. If this winds up being horrible, we're just going to shift gears in the future. We got a couple of things queued up. Book 3, Chapter 45. How Panurge taketh advice of Triboulet. On the 6th day thereafter, Pantagruel was returned home at the very same hour that Triboulet was by water come from Blois. Panurge, at his arrival, gave him a hog's bladder puffed up with wind, and resounding because of the hard peas that were within it. Moreover, he did present him with a gilt wooden sword, a hollow budget made of a tortoise shell, an osier wattled wicker bottle full of Breton wine, and 25 apples of the orchard of Blanc-Dureau. If I remember, Breton wine is not the good wine. Maybe it is. I don't remember. If he be such a fool, quoth Carpane, as to be won with apples, there is no more wit in his pate than in the head of an ordinary cabbage. Tarbelay girded the sword and scrip to his side, took the bladder in his hand, ate some few of the apples, and drunk up all the wine. Panurge, very wistly and heedfully looking upon him, said, I never yet saw a fool, and I have seen 10,000 francs worth of that kind of cattle, who did not love to drink heartily, and by good long draughts. When Triboulet had done with his drinking, Panurge laid out before him and exposed the sum of the business wherein he was to require his advice, in eloquent and choicely sorted terms, adorned with flourishes of rhetoric. But before he had altogether done, Triboulet with his fist gave him a bouncing wherret between the shoulders, rendered back into his hand again the empty bottle, filliped and flirted him in the nose with the hog's bladder, and lastly, for a final resolution, shaking and wagging his head strongly and disorderly, he answered nothing else by this: By God, mad fool, beware the monk! Bazanse, hornpipe! These words thus finished, he slipped himself out of the company, went aside, and, rattling the bladder, took a huge delight in the melody of the ricking, crackling noise of the peas. After which time, it lay not in the power of them all to draw out of his chaps the articulate sound of one syllable, insomuch that, when Panurge went about to interrogate him further, Triboulet drew his wooden sword, and would have stuck him therewith. I have fished fair now, quoth Panurge, and brought my pigs to a fine market. Have I not got a brave determination of all my doubts, and a response in all things agreeable to the oracle that gave it? He is a great fool, that is not to be denied, yet he is a greater fool who brought him thither to me. That bolt, quoth Carpalin, levels point-blank at me. But of the three, I am the greatest fool, who did impart the secret of my thoughts to such an idiot ass and native ninny. Without putting ourselves to any stir or trouble in the least, quoth Pantagruel, let us maturely and seriously consider and perpend the gestures and speech which he hath made and uttered. In them, veritably, quoth he, I have remarked and observed some excellent and notable mysteries, yea, of such import, worth, and weight, that I shall never henceforth be astonished, nor think strange, why the Turks, with a great deal of worship and reverence, honor and respect natural fools equally with their primest doctors, muftis, divines, and prophets. Did you not take heed, quoth he, a little before he opened his mouth to speak, what a shogging, shaking, and wagging his head did keep? By the approved doctrine of the ancient philosophers, the customary ceremonies of the most expert magicians, and the received opinions of the learned lawyers, such a brangling agitation and moving should by us all be judged to proceed from, and be quickened and suscitated by the coming, an inspiration of the prophetizing and fatidical spirit, which, entering briskly and on a sudden into a shallow receptacle of a debile substance, for, as you know, and as the proverb shows it, a little head containeth not much brains, was the cause of that commotion. This is to conform to what is avouched by the most skillful physicians, when they affirm that shakings and tremblings fall upon the members of a human body, partly because of the heaviness and violent impetuosity of the burden and load that is carried, and other part by reason of the weakness and imbecility that is in the virtue of the bearing organ. A manifest example whereof appeareth in those who, fasting, are not able to carry to their head a great goblet full of wine without a trembling and a shaking in the hand that holds it. This of old was accounted a preconfiguration and mystical pointing out of the Pythian divineress, who used always, before the uttering of a response from the oracle, to shake a branch of her domestic laurel. Lampridius also testifieth that the emperor Heliogabalus, to acquire unto himself the reputation of a soothsayer, did, on several holy days of prime solemnity, in the presence of the fanatic rabble, make the head of his idol by some sleight within the body thereof publicly to shake. Plautus, in his Asinaria, declareth likewise that Sorius, whithersoever he walked, like one quite distracted of his wits, kept such a furious lolling and mad-like shaking of his head, that he commonly affrighted those who casually met with him in his way. The said author, in another place, showing a reason why Charmides shook and brangled his head, assevered that he was transported and in an ecstasy. Catullus, after the same manner, maketh mention, in his Berecynthia and Attis, of the place where the Maenads, Bacchical women, she-priests of the lion god, and demented prophetesses, carrying ivy bows in their hands, did shake their heads. As in the like case among the Galli, the gelded priests of Cybele were wont to do in the celebrating of their festivals. Whence, too, according to the sense of the ancient theologues, she herself has her denomination. For Kubistan signifieth to turn around, whirl around, shake the head, and play the part of one that is wry-necked. Sembably, Titus Livius writeth that, in the solemnization time of the Bacchanalian holidays at Rome, both men and women seemed to prophesize and vaticinate, because of an affected kind of wagging of the head, shrugging of the shoulders, and jectigation of the whole body, which they used then most punctually. For the common voice of the philosophers, together with the opinion of the people, asserteth for an irrefragable truth that the vaticination is seldom by the heavens bestowed on any without the concomitancy of a little frenzy and a head-shaking, not only when the said presaging virtue is infused, but when the person also therewith inspired declareth and manifesteth it unto others. The learned lawyer Julian, being asked on a time if that slave might be truly esteemed to be healthful and in a good plight, who had not only conversed with some furious, maniac, and enraged people, but in their company had also prophesied, yet without a noddle-shaking concussion, answered that, seeing there was no head-wagging at the time of his predictions, he might be held for sound and competent enough. Is it not daily seen how schoolmasters, teachers, tutors, and instructors of children shake the heads of their disciples as one would do a pot in holding it by the lugs, that by this erection, velication, stretching, and pulling their ears, which, according to the doctrine of the sage Egyptians, is a member consecrated to the memory, that they may stir them up to recollect their scattered thoughts, bring home those fancies of theirs which perhaps have been extravagantly roaming about broad, strange, and uncouth objects, and totally range their judgments, which possibly by disordinate affections been made wild, to the rule and pattern of a wise, discreet, virtuous, and philosophical discipline. All which Virgil acknowledgeth to be true in the branglement of Apollo Cynthius. Well, at least this is going to be shortish, relatively speaking. That was, what was that even about? It's like, if you shake your head, you're some kind of sage? Is that what you think? Is that what you're getting out of it?